Well, yes, that's what they're proposing.
Yeah. I mean, it's just from the perspective in New Zealand, like we're just about to close our last oil refinery in the country, which is an enormous facility up in the far north. But I would imagine that any kind of refining of fossil fuels to be a extremely dirty process. Like, I don't think there's been any consideration of the fact that what this proposed, like in the consent, there's just really no consideration that that's actually what at least half of this proposal is actually about, is refining diesel fuel. Yeah, whether or not that's technically feasible is kind of an aside from the fact that it's just not been understood in those terms at all.
One of the more transparent things about the documentation is that it alludes to the fact that the diesel production line is an experiment, and that, as I said, that's one of the more transparent things. Now, this has never been done, and as I mentioned in my report, scientists are still at the stage of discussing whether it's even sensible to do this, because it's not possible currently, and the amount of toxins that are in municipal solid waste, pyrolysis, oil and gas, there's just not people don't know how to clean them yet. It's not yet been invented, and the energy costs are tremendous. And what the paper that I cite there, Kusenberg, it's from this year. It's essentially saying that it's got to be blended with fossil fuels at least to try and dilute all the toxins that are in the oil. So, in short, yes, it's going to be a very dirty, messy process. And I don't think as well that all these waste oils that they're going to need to produce have been taken into consideration in the proposal. Hello, Liam.
Hello, hi. Sorry, I'm late. I had trouble finding the Zoom link, but here I am. Nice to see you all, and nice to meet you virtually, Andrew.
Yes, same for me.
Just to let you know, Liam, you're being recorded too. We're all being recorded, but it's just for the community. So yeah.
Great, fantastic.
I'm not sure at this stage what further questions, in a sense, I have. Like early in the week, Andrew, I've been working on Liam and I have both been working on the Zero Waste Network submission. And I sort of felt like the more that I got into reading about the scrubbers, and the more that I got to reading about the processes, and I was trying to match up what they were saying with some of the schematics, the less sense it actually made to me. Because there are places in there in which they refer to a semi-dry or dry scrubber, and then there's other places where they refer to a wet scrubber. There are places where they're saying it goes through that the emissions are cleaned, that they're cleaned twice, that there's some water wash, but then the schematics don't show any of that actually happening, and it's really hard to ascertain whether or not what sort of side of it. And I suppose I sort of came down on the side of just realizing that actually not a lot of it does make that really adds up very much. But again, that kind of point I was making earlier was this sort of realization that I had, which is that if this proposal was somehow actually feasible from an engineering perspective, that what they're actually proposing to do are two quite distinct processes of pyrolysis and then the actual refining of diesel fuel, which is a quite intensive and dirty process, utterly separate from the pyrolysis process, which is essentially not discussed really in this application at all. So it's, I guess that's the long and short of it, was feeling like I really wanted to touch base with you about it because the whole thing seems so utterly insane.
Well, yes, to reiterate what I said before the recording started, I've been looking at similar type of things for the last 10 years, and I refer to this in my report that I will be submitting. These are not based on technical merit. These type of proposals, they're based on raising the value of shares, and the one at Manawatu is of that ilk, in my opinion. They usually end in failure at best. They usually end in failure in that they never get past commissioning. At worst, there will be environmental disaster. We've seen this in Germany. They were trialed in Germany over a decade ago, and the experts there, they commented on the implausibility or the absence of energy and mass balances. But they were trialed, and it resulted in widespread pollution of wastewater and failure, catastrophic collapse. The technology providers were then kicked out of Germany, and they sought translocation to other parts of the world. They went to the UK. The UK has now trialed and abandoned all this technology, despite the warnings from experts in Germany. And investors still try and find markets for this concept. They move to other parts of the world. So the document that I've looked through is of the ilk of the others that I've seen for over the last 10 years. And experts in this field are very few. People who have actually operated these systems are very few. So for a layperson to read through the documentation, they think, what the heck is this, and what is going on? And then only when you delve further into it, as you've just said, you see that things don't match up. They're full of contradictions and black boxes. I've seen some very bad ones where they name process line components with the most bizarre thing that you could imagine. That's not engineering term. And this is what we've got in this case. Now, so let's talk about the wastewater. So the cleaning up of pyrolysis oil and gas is non-standard, and this should have been picked up by PDP. The components proposed, it is a black box. We're not knowing much detail here about what's happening to clean up the gas, but it will not function on the two components that are listed. And what will happen here is that it will soon break down. It will soon clog with tar. And then they either need to shut down the system and clean out the cleanup train, or they will need to find another way of cleaning it, which is usually water. And in Germany, there was lots of wastewater sent to lakes and rivers, over 100,000 meters cubed of it. And this is the problem that we've got. So it's non-standard technology. It's available. Scandinavian countries have been experimenting with this since the 1950s. And I cite one reference to this, but it's not the standard stuff that's included in this permit application. And this should have been picked up by PDP. But in mitigation, they're not experts in this technology. It is known, but they're not experts in it. And so that's one reason why they maybe should have picked it up. But one would have expected that they would have been more critically appraising the document rather than just taking as read what's been said.
Yeah.
In terms of the wastewater treatment plant, this is just a black box. And this is what they're doing is in the application is just by default, they're sending all the dirty process lines to this black box. And we need to know what's in this system. This is not good enough. You cannot just by default send everything to this unnamed. We've got to know details about what they're proposing to do to clean up this gas and oil. Because this is the key problem with incineration. What you get is you get a relatively inert output. I mean, it's got dioxins and things, but it's relatively inert. With pyrolysis, you're getting a very, very dirty output. And it's a complex chemical mixture that needs an intensive amount of cleaning to make it into anything that's of value. And this is where the problem comes in, because in principle, you can pyrolyze anything, but what you'll get is you'll get something that's useless. To clean it up, you've got to put an enormous amount of energy in to make it into anything useful. It's like alchemy. It comes to the point of how much investment do you want to spend in trying to clean up this gas and oil? And you're going to get copious amounts of waste, solids and liquids, and these just are not explained in the permit application. It should be rejected alone on those grounds.
So Andrew, can you explain a little bit more about those waste streams? Like, so you're saying something separate than the char as a, like, you're saying something separate from the char as a solid waste stream?
Okay. So so the gas that comes out of a pyrolyzer is full of condensable hydrocarbons. So I'm referring here to gas and oil. So what I mean by this is that when the gas comes out at high temperature, and this is another thing about the application, it says it's going to operate at 1,000 degrees. Now that's tremendous temperature, and it's not pyrolysis temperature.
No.
So it'll come out at a high temperature, say 500 degrees. And at that temperature, all the hydrocarbons, the polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, by the way, which are highly toxic, they will be in gaseous form. And as they cool down, as they go along the output line from the pyrolysis retort, the reactor, they begin to cool and they condense on pipework at varying temperatures. So it's a very complex mixture. And the gases, the molecules in the gaseous mixture condense at a wide range of temperatures from 500, 600 degrees down to about 150 degrees or less. So they're going to condense on the pipework throughout the output stream. Some of them become oils when they condense into liquid. Some of them remain in the gas stream. So that's why I'm referring to both gas and oils, because it's the whole mixture is a mixture of condensable hydrocarbons. Have I made that simple enough to understand?
Yeah.
The gas it depends on the temperature. So if something is only at a certain phase, gas and oil, depending on temperature.
Yeah. And
this is where the problem is, because you cannot use, and some of them are polar, so which means they will dissolve in water. Some of them are not. So you cannot use just water scrubbers. Water scrubbing will take some of them out. The Swedes, as I mentioned earlier, use oil scrubbers. And even then, you're not getting a clean gas. It's very complicated. And so this is where the copious amounts of waste come in, because you're using water to clean them, you're using oils to clean them, you're using dry scrubbing methods to clean them. And this creates spent residues, which will need disposing of, and they're hazardous waste. They're rich in phenols and other toxins, and they're hazardous waste. And yet what we get in this proposal is send it to the wastewater treatment plant, but nothing's described about the wastewater treatment plant. And even if you do send it to some kind of system that can clean it, you're going to have to use high volumes of material, high volumes of water, oils, cleanup material, and that will generate waste. And that's not described anywhere at all in the proposal. And what we've got here is technology that's consuming large amounts of power. So these are not renewable for that reason as well. And it becomes uneconomic, and it becomes where there's a financial failure of the whole concept because of that.
Yeah. So how does the bag house, how does that feature in this, in the release of the hydrocarbon gas and the so-called scrubbing of that?
Well, the baghouse filter is something used in incineration. Really, but you can use them as gasifier. A gasifier is like a pyrolysis system, but it produces a lot cleaner gas that can be managed. I've never known anywhere where you can send a pyrolysis gas to an engine. It's not been done, because the gas is so dirty. We're talking about a system here that's very, very dirty. It uses a very dirty gas. Anyway, a baghouse filter, it's for a clean gas where there's no condensables in it, which means that it's gas that's taking particulates. So it's like passing it through a fabric. They're made of ceramics for high temperatures in incineration, but you pass them through a fabric, a ceramic, something that's porous essentially. So the gas will pass through, but any larger molecules will not pass through, will stick to the fibers of the fabric. They don't tolerate very high temperature, and if the gas is not cleaned properly, which means that if a downstream component is not cleaning out, is not cooling the gas. So in gasifier systems and pyrolysis systems, you have a cleanup train that's got maybe 5 or 6 components. You've got to cool the gas, You've got to strip out the dirty gas. It goes through a water washer. None of these are mentioned here. So this is completely bizarre. So if you don't clean out the stuff before the baghouse, it will clog. So which means that you'll be getting, it won't be able to tolerate the high volume of pollutants in the gas, and the fabric will just soon clog up. So that will mean that there will get back pressure in the system. The gas won't flow through. It will have to come out somewhere, which you could be talking about airborne pollution here, dirty gas, or they will have to shut the system down. If the baghouse filter is not able to cope, and I don't think it will be able to cope. And then what you'll get with the baghouse filter, it needs to be shaken or cleaned regularly, and then you get dirty solid residue. Where's this going to go? You know, this is not mentioned in the proposal.
Yeah, thank you. That's very helpful. Yeah. I've learned more about ion exchange scrubbers this week than I really ever wanted to know about. Yeah.
So Andrew, do you have any sense of the quantities of this kind of these waste products that will come out that are not mentioned at all in the application, that will come out of these cleaning and scrubbing processes? If they're putting 40 tons through the pyrolyzer per day, is there any sort of approximation of how much, of these waste products might actually come out?
Yeah, that could actually be worked out. I've not done that. Look, the 40 tons per day is not excessive. It's a modest plant. I'd say an equal amount of wash water would be needed, just as a very, very rough estimate. And it depends it depends how the system works. Now, as has been mentioned, the pyrolysis system is essentially, again, it's a black box. We know nothing at all about how the system works. We're hearing that it operates at 1,000 degrees, which is just not pyrolysis temperature. We've got a technical report which says that the char that was produced is mostly ash. That's not pyrolysis. That for there to be ash means there's got to be oxygen in there, which means it's got to combust the carbon element. So then that's going to be ash. And I mean, so that this is completely contradictory, and so we know nothing about it. So it's hard to determine any kind of sense from what the proposal's saying about mass balance or energy balance, which we've not discussed yet. But the gas could be approximately 50% at waste, and then you'll need an equal amount to clean up that. So I'd say for every ton you maybe need a ton of water, just as a rough estimate, and then the residues that coming off that, there's a paper, I've not included it, which talks about hydrocracking and to make diesel from pyrolysis of pure plastic, and this is a lot simpler than municipal solid waste pyrolysis, and that's not even been done yet. And they're talking about losses of approximately 50% of the gas being lost to waste. So that would be the waste material that would need to be treated as hazardous waste. So in the proposal, they're not mentioning that anything like this. They're saying that all the stuff can be used, but it can't. It's only a select fraction of it can be used. And then that depends on what type of system that they're using. So I know I've waffled a lot and I've not given you the right answer, but I cannot tell you from the lack of information given, but it will be a lot. And this is why the plant's closed down, because it just takes so much of effort to clean it up again, to produce very little, if anything, of use. So sorry, I would estimate that you will be approximate to the tonnage coming in will be an approximate volume of waste coming out. So that would be both the cleanup material and the unused components of the municipal solid waste. Municipal solid waste has approximately 20-30% inert fraction. So that will usually, in incinerators, that will come out as bottom ash or as fly ash. So that's 20% knocked off straight away. This comes from the metals and the incombustible hydrocarbons, But with pyrolysis, you're not supposed to be combusting it, so you're going to get more of this. And it's no good saying that this is going to be all the recyclates are going to be taken out first. You know, even these recycling systems, they cannot take out all the metals and all the toxins. So I'd say just alone with the inerts, you've got 20% of the tonnage coming in that will be residue, solid residue you can't get rid of. So that's what 10 tons for every 40, approximately, just less. And then you've got the pyrolysis waste that can't be used. So I'd add on another 20 tons to that as a rough estimate.
No, thank you. That's really, really useful. And then when you were talking about, you know, for example, the bag house filter and the scrubbers potentially not being able to manage to treat actually what is the gases and what's coming out, if those don't act as they've said they will they then require to be disposed of or replaced, and that's an additional, you know, waste product to have to deal with?
Well, in general steady state operation, even when these are functioning as they are designed, they produce solid waste, and which needs disposing of. So it's the capture material and also the chemicals that they use to capture it. So the scrubbing liquids. There's mention of a wet scrubber, an ion exchange wet scrubber, and the baghouse filter will capture particles. So that will need to be disposed of. Usually it's hazardous waste.
And is there any way to understand what kinds of quantities that would represent, like in terms of the baghouse filter, what amounts we would be looking at?
Well, I've just been asked that question. It's possible, yes. I'd need some work to try and, I'd need to put some work in to try and, it's possible. You could estimate it.
Okay.
But it's hard to estimate because we don't know what type of pyrolysis system is going to be operating. We're told in one report that the char's going to be not char, it's going to be fly ash. And then in another report, we're told that they're going to burn the char to drive the system. And then we're told that they're not going to burn anything but the gas. So we're in the dark, really. You're just trying to pick things out from the dark. So it's difficult. You could make an estimate.
That's all good, Andrew. It's probably not important. I think I think the three of us, Liam and Tricia and I, are relative novices at dealing with the RMA, what we call the RMA process, the resource management consenting process. So we are, this is not something we have a great deal of familiarity with in terms of trying to figure out what are going to be the key arguments and the key persuasive pieces of evidence for the commissioners who are going to be evaluating this.
Well, let me say this. It's going to be appreciable. It's not going to be negligible. It's going to be an appreciable volume, which I would say would be in the matter of just maybe 50% of the tonnage coming in at least. And if they want to make diesel out of it, then you've got some on top. This is talking purely about cleaning the pyrolysis gases.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, Andrew, I'd be really interested in that. You mentioned an article about hydrocracking of pyrolysis oils, because I couldn't, again, trying to sort of do research without having any background in this, but I just couldn't find any information. Obviously, they don't say anything about how it's going to work on their application, but actually, what are the waste products of hydrocracking, and also what are the inputs as well? I know that hydrogen is involved in where they might get the hydrogen from, how energy intensive it is to source that hydrogen, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, well, there is that as well. Yeah, you need process chemicals, and anyway, I'll send you over the article and or the articles. There's a few, so
great.
I'll send them over to you, Lee.
Thank you.
Cool. I don't want to keep you, Andrew. I don't know if you two, Tricia, Liam, have got other specific questions that you want to talk to.
I'm just interested, Andrew, if because this company Bioplant, I don't know if you've seen, but they have a few proposals for different parts of New Zealand, and this one in Fielding in Manawatu is the most advanced, and it's also the only one that is proposing to process municipal solid waste. The other ones they're looking at is purely biomass, so forestry residue and potentially some sewage sludge and things like that. And is there, I'm just curious if there's, how much of a significant difference is it if they are compared to pyrolyzing biomass to municipal solid waste?
It's significant, yes. It can be done, pyrolysis of biomass. Well, historically, that's what pyrolysis, it's been practiced for thousands of years. It's how we actually used to make things like methanol and creosote before petrochemicals. It used to be by pyrolysis of wood cellulose. Woodmen used to make charcoal. That's how charcoal is made, pyrolysis. So without knowing anything about these other proposals, if they're proposing to pyrolyze biomass, depending on what they want to do with what comes out, yeah, it can be done. To make diesel out of it, no, that's something different. That would still be experimental. But yeah, to pyrolyze wood is acceptable. I mean, it's not a clean process, but it depends what they want to get out of it. If they want to get methanol and creosote, that's established. It's energy intensive. It's not green. It's not renewable at all, and we've not discussed this so far in this discussion, but this is an energy intensive plant, far more energy intensive than incineration, in complete contrast to the greenwash of the document. It uses enormous amounts of energy. It's not green. No way. It needs fossil fuels to drive it. It's an energy consuming process.
Yeah, just a question from me, Andrew, and thank goodness we have you with us, because it really, really helps us to. I can hear you saying that this is just a no-go and they will never succeed. But honestly, if I'm listening to the councillors around the table at meetings that have been recorded, and they're all voting for a submission for this thing from a city councillor's perspective, they're pretty on board. And so it would take a report like yours. And as you say, there's very few people with this kind of expertise. And certainly I would state with complete clarity and confidence that we don't have anybody in New Zealand with your expertise. I actually think this thing could potentially go ahead. So to have your report and potentially to have your oral submission is really going to be a game changer to us. So I just wanted to say thank you for that, for your time and for agreeing to do this. As Val and Liam have said as well, we don't have expertise in this. We're just people who are trying to support the communities, trying to support our own communities, and literally just researching as best as we can with the skills we have around the research. So, as I say, we really needed you to give us some confidence around there as well as the report. My only question here too is the GGII technology, and you've mentioned the Burgau plant, you've mentioned others that have been unsuccessful, and my understanding is that there is still a GGII bioplant which the feedstock is mixed solid waste in South Korea. Do you know of anyone who has supported communities such as ourselves, perhaps in bringing down the Burgau plant, and perhaps any communities or experts such as yourself who've written reports, or if there's any media or anything around the plant in South Korea that is even slightly similar to the technology that's proposed here that we can draw on and pushing back against this one?
The only thing I can recommend that you read, I wrote the paper that's in Resources Conservation and Recycling, Patented Blunderings, to draw attention to this environment, this universe that I met about 10 years ago, and the references are in there. Germany abandoned it because of the references that are in that paper, and the UK's now abandoned it. I can try and find something from the UK, because we in the UK have recently just gone through what Germany did a decade earlier, and now these people are moving elsewhere, and you're finding them in New Zealand. There've been a lot of press releases in the UK over the last month about how the government's now completely abandoned pyrolysis and gasification, and the councils have got egg on their faces, because, like you mentioned there where you are, that the councils were all gung-ho, let's go for this, because they're in a fix, are the councils, because they've got high volumes of waste. They don't know what to do with it. Incineration's got a bad public perception, and so someone comes along and said, I've got this silver bullet that's going to solve everything, and they jump along, and this is what's happened, and it happened in England, and it happened in Germany. But what happens is it leads to embarrassment. And so maybe in 10 years from now, you can look back on this, and when the councillors are embarrassed by what's happened, and you'll say, well, we told you so. And there's a chance that they may not listen. And then that, again, is what's been happening throughout the world. All I can say to you is that the references in that paper, that they're the ones that you can use. When I will try and find something from the UK recently. I know there have been a number of press releases about this, and I'll see what I can do to find this for you.
Great, thanks. And I'll do the same. I'm sure I can do it from here too, but I just thought if there's anything in particular, that would be great. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I'm assuming that the South Korean plant won't have the same environmental probably standards and protections. There probably isn't very much around reporting on that, I'm assuming. So I'm probably more likely to look towards the UK for that.
Well, yeah, you did ask me about South Korea. Let me tell you this, that nowhere in the world has a pyrolysis system worked on municipal solid waste to produce diesel fuel. Okay, so I don't give much credibility at all to these claims about South Korea. I'd want to see evidence. I want to see evidence of how this is operating, and none has been provided. So I've worked in academia for the last 10 years where it's been at the cutting edge of this technology, never been done. So unless they've done something in secret that they've never disclosed to anyone, something that if it's operating on its own gas, then it's violating the laws of thermodynamics. Then if they've done that and broken the laws of thermodynamics, then good, fair play to them. But I mean, I've never encountered anything like this before that's worked. And scientists are in agreement that it doesn't.
Great.
I've just got one more question, Andrew, and this question isn't necessarily from me. I do work with toxicologists in the work that I do, and I have a colleague that I've just passed this across his desk to see what his reaction was, considering my understanding is that some EDCs can be destroyed, dismantled at very, very high temperatures, and that's his area is in endocrine disrupting chemicals, but certainly not pyrolysis. And he noted that he felt that dioxins also could be destroyed at very high temperatures and made inert. So I just wanted to know what you thought about that. I mean, I think you probably explained it sufficiently enough, but I guess it's also drawing attention to you and perhaps to Val and to Liam as well, that even those that I trust implicitly in the work that I do, I just don't think that they've got it right, because there's a disconnect between their, for example, toxicological or endocrinological work and this too. So it's about really connecting the dots in a very complex system, broader than the plant itself.
Well, the dioxins are of a concern because at the low temperatures of pyrolysis, you will get more of them, and in the substoichiometric, the low oxygen environment, you'll get more dioxins produced. And incinerators, the best available techniques, they still produce dioxins, but they're engineered to minimize the dioxin production. So it's of great concern is the dioxin release here, because we're not told how they're going to be managed adequately. It is of concern. temperature. It's you need to some form at high temperatures, some form at low temperature.
He's frozen on us.
Yeah. I just really wanted to ask him a question about that, the char from plastics that I've seen in those journal articles for soil conditioning. I really want to know his thoughts about that.
So that's been proposed in some
peer-reviewed academic studies. I really want to know what he thinks about that, because somebody needs to push back on that, and I'm not seeing it.
In peer-reviewed engineering journals?
No, I think it's ag research, actually. I don't think it's in engineering.
And it's pure plastic feedstock.
It's from plastics, municipal solid waste. It's char. It's not from pyrolysis. I think it's from incineration.
I did follow up a little bit with Jonathan's point about gasification, coal works and gasification. And I've just put a little paragraph or so into the zero waste submission about that. Ministry for the Environment has quite a lot of information about some 54 sites around New Zealand that were gas works or still are gas works that essentially use gasification for coal, which I think Andrew was alluding to is very common and has been used for generations as a means by which to get useful gas from coal. And it's a single stream, but that what has resulted are huge amounts of contamination around these sites from the kind of tar and stuff that he's talking about. So I just made, but it was really helpful, actually, Jonathan's comment to alert me to that. And I was going to ask you, Liam, what you thought, if you thought that there was any benefit in maybe kind of approaching the contaminated land sector group at Wasteman's, and seeing if they were interested at all in putting in a submission around this.
I
don't know much about that group.
I don't know a lot about them either, but they seem to be fairly active. So I think it would probably be, and I'm sure they have people, and with Wasteman's they have all the the good sort of networking emails and stuff. So I'm sure they potentially could put. I think they have a fairly regular newsletters, maybe weekly or something, where they could send out even if someone on the working group doesn't have particular knowledge or interest in this, they could at least send something out.
I think it's some of the stuff Andrew's talking to really interesting. Andrew, are you back? In terms of those waste streams, like as you rightly picked up, all of the wastewater stuff is a major issue that's almost completely glossed over in the entire application. We might have to give up on Andrew.
He seems to still be kind of there, but he hasn't dropped out.
Oh, Zoom.
So how you guys going with the submission, the zero waste submission? Do you need me to?
Well, happy for you to have a look at it to see if you're at all interested.
Val's done some amazing work on that, and I just tried to fill in as much as we can, and a lot of it we did. Well, most of it we did before seeing Andrew's draft report, but there's certainly a lot of there's probably more. I mean, I feel like we could spend a long time detailing a lot of the holes and spending time researching some of the potential issues with this. But I think it's I would it would be great if you have time to have a look at aspects of it.
Yeah, let's see if I can find some time to have a look at it this weekend before it all kicks off again on Monday.
Yeah, awesome.
I guess that's a good question though, Liam. Is we've really lost Andrew now. Yeah. Okay. Well, we might call it a night then. We can just touch base early next week and figure out what's our process going to be for actually finalizing the zero waste submission and getting that submitted. Yeah.
So we want to submit the zero waste submission and all of